With a combined defense budget of $373.5 billion and 1.8 million active soldiers, the European NATO states look good on paper at first glance. However, the reality is quite different. In this video, we will explore the question of whether Europe can defend itself or not. And with that, welcome to a new video on my channel. If you want to stay up to date on security and defense policy, feel free to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my future videos. Let's get started. First, let's clarify why Europe even needs to defend itself in the first place. After all, there was hardly any necessity for this in the past 2 or 3 decades. So, what has changed? For one, the war in Ukraine has brought the largest land war on the European continent since World War II. Since 2022, at least, Russia has undoubtedly become a military aggressor and the greatest threat to peace and security in the Euro-Atlantic area. On the other hand, Europe's protective power, the United States, is increasingly unwilling and unable to fulfill this role. There are several reasons for this. First, in US domestic politics, there is a growing trend towards foreign policy restraint and reduced international engagement, and this sentiment is not limited to MAGA Republicans. Second, US foreign and security policy is increasingly focused on the Indo-Pacific and the competition for dominance in that region between the US and China. Third, even the capabilities of the US military are insufficient to fight a war in both Europe and the Indo-Pacific simultaneously. To illustrate this issue, if Russia were to attack the Baltic states, China might seize the opportunity to attempt a blockade or even a full-blown invasion of Taiwan. The US would hardly be able to fight on both fronts at the same time. Even if we set aside the question of political will, Europe can only expect limited military support from the US in the event of a crisis due to constrained capacities alone. Thus, Europe needs to be able to defend itself. Since Russia poses the primary threat, military capabilities must be focused on deterring and, if necessary, repelling this threat. Which brings us to the current balance of power between the European NATO states and Russia. In 2023, the European NATO states collectively spent a total of $373.5 billion on defense. Russia, on the other hand, spent $74.8 billion. However, it is important to account for differences in purchasing power. Since I couldn't find more recent figures, let's take 2020 as an example. In 2020, Russia spent $66.8 billion on defense. Adjusted for purchasing power, Russia's defense budget for that year amounts to $196.5 billion. This means that the actual difference between the defense budget of the European NATO states and Russia is smaller than it initially appears. When it comes to active troop strengths, the European NATO states currently have around 1.8 million soldiers, while Russia has about 1.3 million soldiers. However, Russia plans to increase its troop numbers to 1.5 million in the coming years. Now, let's move on to the key categories of military equipment. The European NATO states possess a total of 6,297 main battle tanks, with 57% of them concentrated in Greece and Turkey alone. Russia, in contrast, has around 2,000 main battle tanks. In terms of infantry fighting vehicles, the European NATO states are also better equipped with 9,000 units compared to Russia's 4,000. The European NATO states also dominate the category of armored personnel carriers with 21,000 units compared to Russia's 5,000. In the field of artillery, the European NATO states possesses 6,713 units, whereas Russia has 3,329 artillery systems. However, the picture is reversed when it comes to air defense. Russia holds a significant advantage with 2,513 units compared to the European NATO states' 1,215 units. Europe is particularly at a disadvantage in long-range ground-based air defense systems. When it comes to helicopters, the European NATO states have a clear advantage with 3,181 units compared to Russia's 757. A similar advantage exists in fighter aircraft, with the European NATO states owning 2,055 aircraft while Russia has 1,115. In the naval dimension, the European NATO states possesses 140 major surface combatants, whereas Russia has only 33. NATO also leads in submarines with 73 compared to Russia's 50. The figures mentioned above may seem impressive, but they conceal significant differences among the individual European NATO states. For instance, 12 European countries have no main battle tanks and 14 do not possess any fighter aircraft, making them unable to contribute to key missions. Moreover, the European NATO states use a variety of different systems, many of which are outdated or nearly obsolete, including old Soviet stockpiles and other outdated systems such as the Tornado fighter aircraft. Massive cuts in maintenance and modernization programs further worsen the situation. While the absolute numbers of European major military assets may not seem too bad compared to Russia and the US, only a relatively small portion of these systems are modern enough or have the required operational readiness. Therefore, comparisons between Russia and the European NATO states based purely on numbers of tanks, fighter jets and warships only tell part of the story. The US currently plays a central role in Europe's security architecture, not only due to its troop strength, but also, more importantly, as an integrator of the national armed forces. The US possesses the necessary structures and command centers and C2 systems to efficiently coordinate NATO operations in the event of a crisis. This is supported by so-called enablers, which make combat, command and deployment possible in the first place. Germany aims to take on this role in the long term, but it will take many years to achieve. Other countries such as France, Poland or the United Kingdom are also not capable of fulfilling this function. No European country is currently able to command a large formation such as a corps of up to 50,000 soldiers or even an army without US support. The former NATO army headquarters from the Cold War era no longer exist, and while some structures are present at the corps level, European countries lack practical exercise. Corps level exercises are mostly limited to computer simulations, and NATO's multinational corps are missing critical enablers. The European NATO states face the greatest capability gaps in the area of enablers. These include command systems, suppression of enemy air defense and destruction of enemy air defense aircraft and weapons, long-range precision strike weapons, maritime strike, anti-submarine warfare and maritime patrol aircraft, long-range air defense, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance systems, especially reconnaissance drones and satellites, airborne early warning aircraft, strategic airlift air-to-air, refueling aircraft, electronic warfare capabilities, cyber warfare capabilities, and lastly, engineering groups such as mine-clearing tanks. Acquiring these capabilities would enable the European NATO states to handle nearly the full spectrum of tasks with limited or even no support from the US. Europe must be able to defend itself. In my opinion, this should be a no-brainer. The fact that we have lost this capability for so long is nothing short of a scandal. However, the starting point in terms of finance, personnel and material resources is not hopeless when compared to Russia. For Europe to truly be capable of self-defense, two things need to happen. First, the existing armored forces, especially their equipment, must be modernized and their readiness must be improved. Second, the aforementioned capability gaps in the area of enablers must be closed as quickly as possible. Germany could take a leadership role in this effort. However, it is also clear that this cannot be achieved overnight and will not come for free. Experts estimate that it would take Europe more than a decade and a substantial high three-digit billion sum to become fully independent from the US. To answer the initial question, in the short to medium term, Europe is not capable of defending itself, after being in a security policy sleeping beauty slumber for far too long. If you want to learn more about what Donald Trump's re-election could mean for NATO, Ukraine, the Middle East and more, feel free to check out this video. I will link it for you on the I and in the video description. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you stay up to date on security and defense policy. A big thank you to Moritz, who will undoubtedly do a great job editing this video again. And of course, a heartfelt thanks to all of you for watching. See you next time.